Ladies and gentlemen, welcome from Hong Kong. We have morning in Hong Kong, so welcome wherever you see us. We would like to say hello to you and welcome you to our live session for the current MOOC and the MicroMaster session about luxury management. Today again we have exciting guests here, and before I introduce our guest, I would like to introduce my colleague, Dr. Bajak Julie Denici. She is co-teaching together with me, Markus Schuckert, this session, and very happy to introduce our friend here, Alfonso Emanuele. He is the Vice President and General Manager of Aveda Asia Pacific, and what makes him for us very interesting, and basically for you very special guest, is that he's not also very experienced in leading the industry. He's also a book author, writing down his experiences he did in the industry, and he's continuing doing into a book for university students. So that's a very nice blend of being an industry leader and on the other hand then sharing this knowledge back in academia. So Alfonso, thank you very much to have you here. Great to have you here, but I'm sure you have to tell more and share more, so I hand over to you, introducing yourself, and then you have any time to start with your presentation. Thank you. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Markus, and thank you, Bajak, for having me. It's a pleasure. Let me just very quickly introduce myself. My name is Alfonso Emanuele. I'm Italian. I've been living in Hong Kong for the last 5 years. I work for the big luxury cosmetic group, which is Estée Lauder companies, and then concretely I manage 2 brands for the company, which are Aveda and Origins for the whole Asia Pacific. My background, I started my career in consulting, and then quite quickly moved to the industry of beauty and retail, luxury. I started my career in Spain, then I worked in Italy, and then 13 years ago I joined Estée Lauder companies in the UK, and then I moved to Italy, and again, then finally 5 years ago to Asia Pacific. And I'm very happy to be here and share. I'm definitely not here to promote my book, by the way, because it's only printed in Italian so far, so only for those of you who are fluent in Italian, it's probably they can have a chance to read it and enjoy it. But really I'm here because I think when, I'm afraid 25 years ago, I was at university, I really enjoyed having some speakers coming from the concrete world and from the business side, and coming to give a kind of concrete dimension to the theory that is taught in university. And so I was always very grateful, and somehow I'm very happy to come and share it with you. It's a way somehow for me to give back to the university world and to you. What I want to take you through today, so the structure, if I understand well, will be approximately 20 minutes of quick presentation. It's going to be hopefully light and with a lot of real life examples. And then we open up to a question, so we're very much looking forward to your questions that we're going to be discussing here within the 3 of us. My journey is my idea is to take you through a journey. And this is my personal journey and my observation that through Asia. I'm kind of lucky and, here is the book, and lucky and unlucky. Lucky because my job takes me traveling a lot through Asia, and it happened to me that last January I received an email from Cathay Pacific, the airline of Hong Kong, saying, thank you very much for being with us, and you've been spending 1,200 hours only with Cathay Pacific in the last 5 years on board, and which probably makes 1,500 hours across all the airlines. And so actually, this is a nice example to explain that I have to travel a lot, and I travel to Asia, and actually these all started, this thought process, this observation of the different, not just the beautiful countries that we have here in Asia, but also the different cultures, and eventually the consumption styles. And it really triggered me to think, like, where is the consumer going into luxury consumption? And my overall theme I want to pass to you is that independently where you are in the different stages of development of the different Asian countries, I think we all go in the luxury towards buying less stuff and accumulating more experiences in this luxury consumption. And so let me take you through this journey. For me, Asia in first place, it's diversity. I thought coming from Europe that Italians and Germans were different, were very, very different. Actually, there's nothing, that's nothing compared to the diversity you have here. You have Korea and Japan that are separated by 60 miles straight, and there could not be two countries more different in them, like Korea and Japan. So I think this is what triggered. And I want to take you through some images and some pictures I've been shooting during my trips, and how this different Asia. So you have, on one side, you have like the wonderful street food that you can enjoy in Asia, but also this kind of desire to accumulate luxury goods and show them off. This is a picture taken in Hong Kong, and it's not enough to have like a pink Porsche. You also need to call it Mr. Money. This desire and thirst for brands are showing off. This is actually my neighbor polishing the tires of his Ferrari in our building, and this desire to accumulate brands. So this is a picture I took on the metro in Hong Kong, and so like, yes, not one brand is not good enough. You need to put two of them and have a Ferrari and Hermes. I know that one day I'm going to get in trouble for taking pictures to people who are not wanting that. This is the Incheon Airport, and the duty free is one of the biggest duty free markets in the world, and yeah, people accumulating to a point where they cannot even stuff enough products in their bags, and they need to drag them through the airports. And staying on Korea, this is a sticker that you're giving in business class from Korean Air. So it's very good. So if you want to be respected your privacy, you please do not disturb it. Please wake me up if you're meal service. But also something I never saw in Europe before is like, please wake me up for the duty free, which is quite significant and interesting. So very different. You see very different consumption styles. By the way, again on Korea, you probably know that one of the biggest trends right now in Korea is Chinese people going in groups to have a plastic surgery in Korea, and then they need to stay 2-3 days. So of course they take advantage, and they do some shopping, and while they heal. And although these people do not look extremely happy to be, it looks like more of a car crash accident that happened. Very different. But then you move to other countries, and you go to Japan, and you have a completely different consumption style. It's much more experiential. It's much more sophisticated. So this is one of my best examples. This is Itoya. It's a stationery, so it's a place that sells probably the cheapest and more biggest commodity in the world, which are like paper and pens, and they built a cathedral of it, and it's 7 floors where you can buy any kind of possible stationery on the world. And if you happen to be in Tokyo and Ginza, really go to see it. It's really a wonderful example of how consumption can be very, very experiential. Another good example is Tsutaya, again, still in Ginza in Tokyo. For those who think that the books are dead, well, think twice and go to see, because this is not a cathedral to the printed to the books. So wonderful. So this triggered my thought, like, where are the consumers going? Because you see very, very different consumption styles. People stuffing the suitcase with cosmetics in the airport. People wanted to show off, while you have a very different, refined consumption in Japan. And so I like to describe it like this, and this is the name of my first or second chapter in the book. Consumers are all the same. And you know, for a professor of marketing, this is like swearing, something like that. Of course, consumers are not the same. We want to divide and segment and etc. No? But I want to share this how crossing some data, very basic data, with my observation, actually, you will end up agreeing with me, hopefully. So what I did is that I took some very basic GDP per capita. So it's a proxy of what is the wealth of a country, and sorted by from the smaller to bigger. No, so of course you start. I took the Asian countries and just pepper in some benchmark with the US and UK and Italy. So you start from Bangladesh and Cambodia, so very, very low GDP per capita, way below 5,000 US dollars per capita. And you end up to, of course, the most prosperous countries, which are Australia, Singapore, I put the US, UK, New Zealand, Hong Kong, and Japan. No? And then I wanted to cross. And my observation on the consumption styles. And so I kind of found a very clear correlation. So when you're below 5,000 US dollars of consumption of GDP per capita, the consumption is very, very essential. You just basically buy basic needs to take you and your family through the day, actually, literally. But when the consumption per capita goes over 5,000 US dollars, actually something different happens, that you start buying some kind of luxury goods, but boy, when you have the money to buy this luxury good, you really want to show off. I personally think some parts of Thailand and especially China are there, and Malaysia. Then when the GDP per capita, when the country gets richer, GDP per capita, again, it's a proxy because you really do an average of a country, and you know, in countries you have segment of populations which are different, so you can apply this curve through the population of the same country. Then the consumption changes and becomes rational divergent. I like to call it like this. So it's something that, I mean, in Master of Tourism, you know very well, why the same consumer will fly on a low-cost airline and go into a five-star hotel. It's a kind of divergent behavior. And it's really because they decide, they have the money, but they decide to spend where they see a real value in the experience. So probably airlines are quite undifferentiated nowadays. So why to spend more? Go low cost, but then hotels are definitely very differentiated, and the experience are very differentiated. So that's the divergent. And I see countries like in Asia, Taiwan, Korea, definitely some parts of China, the most developed parts of China, are already there. And then when the GDP per capita goes over $30,000, then it's completely different. Then the consumer asks for something different. He asks for experience. And to me, this is the meaning of consumers are all the same. Actually, when we observe such a different consumption styles between countries, actually, it's just we are all on a journey in the same direction. So one of the questions now, where is the luxury consumers going, in my opinion, is going towards incorporating big elements of experience, significant elements of experience into the physical goods. And somehow we are all on our journey. We can observe within our country different segments of population. We can even think that our families, probably of origins, our parents were in a previous consumption style. So this is my observation. The problem, and this is the title of the book, is that to satisfy this experiential consumer, you need things that do not necessarily sit into marketing. And so as a marketer, you're responsible for the prosperity and the future of your brand, but then you have to deal with things that do not sit there. So in my opinion, and this is my opinion, my theory, and of course I'm sure in the future more people can contribute to that and add more pillars. In my opinion, this is what happened. Sorry, I'm gonna. First of all, this process is accelerating. It's accelerated by four things. One is the globalization. So we tend to forget that 30 years ago, the world was divided in clusters and there were not that much global trade between them. Second is the acceleration of the technology adoption. I don't want to dwell too much into this graph, it's a little bit thick, but basically this shows how fast it takes in the US for a technology to reach 80% of penetration. So, and this shows that it took 78 years to have a telephone, like a physical telephone. It took 25 years to get a radio and a fridge, 20 years to have a television and a PC, and probably less than 10 years to get a smartphone. So the technology adoption from the consumer is accelerating, and so this is changing the world much faster. And then the other two factors that really are accelerating this phenomenon is the fact that the digital landscape, so this combination of, it's not much that there is internet, it's the combination of smartphones and social media that creates the information readily available at any time. And this creates a shift on the influence models. Before we had to rely always on the mouth-to-mouth, on the people, like referral friends, but basically we had to refer to basically or the media, the press and the television, and nowadays it's more the influencers. So this is completely changing. And this is accelerating this change of the model. And I like to describe it, please allow me to be extremely simplistic now. If the traditional marketing was I really want to take the 4 Ps, product, price, place, promotion. I know it's much more complicated than that. I always like to thought that a brand is a house and is made for these things. Then what happens is that the change, this acceleration we see through the globalization, the digital landscape, and really what we see a lot in the cosmetics is the shift of the influence models from traditional media to the influencers. This is kind of a earthquake under the traditional house of the pillars of a luxury brand. And so somehow we need to change the paradigm, and if the consumer is evolving towards experiences, then we need 4 new pillars. And in my opinion, and again, as I said before, is my view, is that there are 4 new pillars that need to integrate the traditional ones. And to me are the in-store experience, the storytelling, the digital contents, and of course the sustainability. So the problem, as I was saying a minute ago, is like if you're a marketer and you're in charge of making sure that your brand is around in 5 years' time, and you used to work on your beautiful product, your price, and the distribution channels, suddenly you have to take care of things that this is the dilemma that do not sit with you. In-store experience is clearly not always in marketing. So that's always the question when I get somebody approaching me for a job. I always ask, like, who owns the in-store experience? Is it sitting in marketing or is it sitting somewhere else? And now you make sure that marketing can influence that. Storytelling, and we're going to talk about that, digital content sustainability. So let me take you through the journey. And I want to make some examples that I see in the luxury industry. Most of them come from the luxury industry, of brands that are really ahead of the curve on this. So let's talk about the store experience. And this is, I'm a little bit known between my team of saying this thing is a kind of my mantra. And I like to, and actually it's also my blog. I like to say retail is dead, long live retail. No, so like e-commerce, is it really killing retail? No, thank goodness it's not killing it. Actually, in a conference where we attended a month ago, they were saying actually globally the brick and mortar is growing 2% globally, so it's not a big growth. What is happening is that e-commerce has taken away this kind of logistical function of retail. So this function of passing products over a counter, actually commerce can take that. So finally, now retail is free to basically concentrate on what is the real reason why people take the time to go to a store, which is the experience. So, and there are wonderful examples. One of them is an Australian brand that makes stationery. It's called KKK. It's in Australia and in Asia. So again, selling one of the poorest materials in the world, which is paper. And they make notebooks and they make calendars, etc. But it's all centered around women's empowerment and how the organization of a day can, and through these notebooks, of course, can empower women to live a better life. So what they do is that they create a lot of courses called Live Your Best Life, make time for enjoy the things that really matter in life, do more at what makes you happy, etc. So suddenly, somebody who's selling paper becomes much more than that, right? It becomes a lifestyle and becomes really an experience you get in stores or in these seminars. My second favorite example is Lululemon. Of course, everybody knows Lululemon and this lifestyle brand, and they define themselves like the lifestyle brand for people who sweat. And so what they organize in their stores, every store is different, and there are a lot of things. There is like yoga classes, they have running clubs. I know one store in Melbourne that has a ping pong table. So it's more than that. And again, is to empower people to create this bridge of values between the brand and yourself, and create an experience in store. Second pillar is storytelling. I think the digital landscape opens the space for really storytell our brands. And I like to say like this, storytelling, I like to say that the adults still want to hear bedtime stories. We all want that. We all live to hear stories. And I think nowadays we are less interested in a product. We want to hear the story of this brand because, as I was saying before, we want to create this bridge of values between the values of the brand and our values, and see if there is a good cultural fit. And to do that, you need storytelling. The examples I want to share with you is actually an Hong Kong clothing brand. It's called Grana. And their story is that basically they cut the middleman, they have the stores, and they go and buy directly the best, I would say, materials for their clothing, and they search the word. So if you go to their website, they have a lot of stories about where they go and find the best. So for instance, they have the Mongolian cashmere. So on their website and in store, they really explain what is the characteristic of the cashmere and how is the making of this cashmere. And they do all this in a very, I think, articulated way for each single of the materials they use. And Grana is also a second interesting story, is that you go in store, but you cannot buy in store, meaning like you cannot leave. The store is basically a showroom. You can try the things, and then there is a laptop where you can order the things, and they're going to be shipped to you within 24 hours. Third pillar is the digital content. So everybody talks about this, and I really like personally this image, being Italian, of course. This image from Google. It's a very famous image. Probably most of you already know it. What is this picture? Is the St. Peter's Square in Rome at the election of the Pope in 2005 and the election of the following Pope in 2013. And spot the difference between these two images. It's very clear. What does it mean, besides the fact that everybody has a smartphone or a tablet? It's very, very interesting because it shows that while in 2005, if you wanted to hear about the election of this Pope, the only option you had was to go to traditional media, right? Turn on the TV, turn on the radio, or look at magazines. In 2013, you could probably go on YouTube and find it narrated with a different angle, physical angle, a different perspective, with a different commentary from people. So this is a big shift, because this means that before the contents, and probably I'm talking about things you already know, but before the contents, we always had to trust media to do them. Now everybody can produce contents. What does it mean for a luxury brand? That, of course, we like the contents, the very nice models that are used by the luxury brands, but maybe you want to hear it for somebody like you to tell you why they have this affinity with this brand, how does it feel when they fit in it. So the problem for us is that when we talk about digital, we always think about the medium. Oh, we need to do some digital. And that's not really the point. The point is that is the supremacy of contents. And for us as marketers, it changes because from contents producers, we have to stop doing most of it, and we need to move to kind of stimulate contents from people that are like consumers, the famous user-generated contents. It completely changes the job of a marketer. It completely changes the profile of marketers. So it's a big seismic change in the age of the beyond marketing. The example, I really like this example. L2 is a great company. It's made of NYU professors, and they measure the share of voice in the digital space. And so look at these columns. This is just an example. So department stores, so where luxury goods are traditionally sold in the most of the world. And this is they calculate the global market share of this. And so look on the left, you have the share of post. So this is the contents that are made by the brands and pushed to the consumers. And this is the share of interactions, basically like or comments. So what is the correlation between right and left? The answer is 0. So this chart shows us that no matter how many contents you want to produce, your job has changed. Your job just changed towards making things that actually consumer really not making, like having somebody making things that your consumer want to see. And this, as I said, completely changes our job. So the point is not that we need to do something on the web. Of course we need to do something on the web and watch it on your mobile phones, but it's like we need to go to the place that actually resonates with the consumers. So not stay on the left side, but stay on the right side. Coming in the house hotel. This is an example that, hospitality, sorry, is an example like Four Seasons, and this is a chart is a little bit older because it's already 3 years old, has no problem at all to feature on their homepage user-generated contents, have this live feed of it. So they've been one of the first to recognize that besides shooting their own nice pictures, actually consumers are able to give it a special angle that probably resonates more with the consumer. The other one, I'm not going to play this video, but you have the link in the presentation. It's a nice commercial of Tesla. It's a kid that thinks that he's in a spaceship, goes into a Tesla, and then goes in a space travel with his father. Except that this video was not produced by Tesla. It was produced by somebody with his own kid in the garage. And there are so many examples like this. Last, sustainability. Okay, everybody likes to talk about sustainability, right? I read an interview to Schwarzenegger that, he was a politician, and I remember very clearly that 10 years ago he said, like, let's not care, don't worry about sustainability, and now he's made it like his key political platform, so he's like a Republican governor that denied climate change, now suddenly is kind of embracing it. No, why is it relevant for us? I want to show you a couple of things. I know there is a lot of heated debate. I think there is still 2 parties in Australia and the US that still deny climate change, but I don't want to go on that one. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about population. This is the history of population from the year 0, from the birth of Christ, to today. And what it shows that the population curve on this planet was pretty stable not until the Industrial Revolution, until we found fossil fuels. So that kind of reserve energy that actually belongs to centuries or millennials before allowed us to be more efficient in everything we do, to have a bigger agriculture, etc., to travel, and that allowed us to sustain the population of our planet. The problem is that those fossil fuels one day will end. So how do we sustain whatever we do, whatever we produce, from the energy we put in our hotels, to the clothing that we sell, to the cosmetics we do, if everything is based on a source of energy that is going to end? But I'm not going to talk about this. The point I want to make is that, and I think this is a very actual theme. I mean, there have been climate change conference for a long time. I would say the European elections a week ago showed a big rise of the green movement and shows that even for politicians, environment and tackling the issues of climate change is going to be a matter of survival. The point I want to make is that for companies, it's a matter of survival. So if you don't incorporate sustainable practice and don't make sustainable your company, sooner or later, one day, somebody will question your business model. Look at the industry of plastic straws. It went from being an industry, literally overnight, 6 months ago, to die. And so you need to question. So those in the plastic straw industry that invested in paper, plastic straws, they are sustainable. So to me, the point is that it's about it's a matter of life or death for industry. So let me take an example which is exactly the opposite. Let's take 2 oil companies, and even for an oil company which thrives on fossil fuels until today, it makes a huge change the way you operate your business. And I'm going to pick now for a moment British Petroleum. So British Petroleum is one of the major oil companies. And I think in the last 15 years, they had 3 major disasters. They had, of course, an explosion in a refinery where 100 people got killed. They had a huge leak in Alaska. And then they had, of course, I think it was 9 years ago, the famous explosion in the Gulf. And so I made a little exercise just rebasing and going to the stock price of 2005 of British Petroleum and Exxon, and just set starting point at the same 100 basically, and then see the evolution over the years. And you basically see that even with being a polluter, not putting a lot of effort in preventing accidents and being sustainable will basically make your business not sustainable in the future. So the stock price of the green line, which is stock price of BP, was half of it. So to me, sustainability is something that the consumer are going to want, and one day, sooner or later, are going to question your business model about it. So it's better to be prepared. So the other one example is Patagonia. Patagonia is a clothing company that has a very, very militant stance, and is growing very, very fast because of this stance, which are very uncompromising. So this is, I think this is it. So in a nutshell, I think the consumers in luxury goods, I think consumer in general, but especially luxury goods, are all moving towards a more experiential consumption. And in my opinion, you need to have these four pillars: the in-store experience, storytelling, digital content, and sustainability, to support them. And that poses the essential fundamental question on the shift of the marketing people into the marketing, and whoever manages the business, that they need to put a big effort in these new areas.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank
Great.
you.
So I really rushed through it because I really want. I saw questions popping up, and give me a little bit of anxiety because I want to get into them.
So just let to and usually we do this at the end of the session, but what you can't see from behind the camera, we have 8 very engaged colleagues here doing all the technique, gathering your questions and putting then your questions on here on our screen, that we can read those questions. I would suggest, Bajak,
Shall I do a quick recap?
yes, you do
Please.
a quick recap,
Yes.
right? And then we just jump into the YouTube questions.
Yes.
We have already 15 questions, and there are coming more questions. That's awesome this time. We have so Alfonso, you really
So the
trigger.
prepared questions are gone.
And then-
Now
and
we're
then-
going to improvise.
and-
Go for it. Yeah. I
Exactly,
think it's
so
more
we
interesting.
have a lot of very good questions.
Yeah.
Interesting questions.
Bajak,
So
let's go.
just a quick recap. So the focus has been on consumption styles of luxury customers, and I think one of the keywords, Alfonso, you said was buying less but accumulating more experiences is the way luxury consumers are going in this direction. Then you talked about Asia in general. You gave examples about this market being very full of diversity. So in many ways they are very different, but at the end of it you came to this point where you argued that in contrast to what we teach in marketing, consumers are actually all the same, and you made this point by showing us the per capita GDP in different Asian countries, and the relationship between per capita GDP and the consumption patterns of the customers. That was a very, very interesting example, I think. And also, you mentioned that customers are looking for value in their experience, and I think very good example was considering a hospitality industry. You might have the budget to pay a higher fee for your flight, but perhaps you choose to fly with a budget airline but stay at a luxury hotel at the destination. So this is the experience that you are looking for. And also you talk about incorporating big elements of experience to the consumption of luxury goods. And you introduce us 4 new pillars of marketing. Those are in-store experience, storytelling, digital content, mainly focusing on user-generated content, and the very important matter of sustainability. So before we go into our questions, one theme that I have observed from the questions were related to different generations' buying behavior. So some of the learners were raising concerns about different generations, younger generation that has more focus on digital experience as well as online shopping versus let's pick an older generation. Give me an older generation.
Gen X?
No, not old enough.
Older.
Baby
50s?
boomer.
Baby boomers.
boomer.
Thank
Okay,
you.
baby boomers.
Baby boomers. Like my mother, she wouldn't use her credit card online. So do you think these strategies, these 4 new pillars would apply to a generation like baby boomers, or are they more for younger generations like Generation X or even Generation Y?
It's an excellent question. Well, first of all, it really depends on the country where you are, no? If you're in Malaysia, where 50% of population is below 30, and no, 50% is below 25 and 75% is below 35, of course, this goes much faster. And actually, we observe in countries like Malaysia, Philippines, where you have this huge demographic push, the change goes much faster in distribution, in these pillars. Going to your question, baby boomers. Some of them, I think, in-store experience, for instance, absolutely yes. And I'm thinking, especially thinking about Japan, which is a big, like aging population, where with a lot of wealth still in the older generations. I would tend to say yes, all the pillars, except maybe digital contents, because of course, digital contents, of course, you need to be very, into it. But I would like to make also a counterexample. What we observe for instance, in cosmetics is that in Japan, this is a very counterintuitive. The millennials and the Gen Z buy less online than the older millennials and then Gen X. So it's not necessarily a one-way direction. I would say, as a broad generalization, yes, it's younger buy online, but it's very interesting because in these countries they favor much more the in-store experience. So I don't know if I confused you in my answer. I would say, long story short, I would say the pillars, they're absolutely relevant for everyone, including the older generation, the baby boomers, except the digital contents, I would say.
Okay. So we have now 22 questions from learners. We need to be a little bit concise with the answer on those questions.
Okay.
Here, YouTube question number 1. How to attract potential customers, even if they couldn't afford those luxury items?
Okay, here I have two interesting examples. Of course, you want to stay expensive to keep the desirability and, of course, to sustain the quality of it. I think there are two very interesting examples. One is Godiva and one is Tiffany. Let me start from Tiffany, which is more clear. Nobody can afford a $5,000 ring. Not a lot of people can afford $5,000, although they aspire, etc. So Tiffany introduced all the charms line, the silverware, etc. So that's very interesting because, and associated with having like a more like a kind of department store corner rather than have like the flagship store. That's how they recruit the millennials. The very similar example, Godiva. Godiva, again, buying a chocolate box that is worth $30, $40, it's a bit expensive. So the way they recruit, they put the ice cream machine. And you have like a wonderful ice cream, really high quality, but still with $5. So that's how they do to approach it. Sometimes you have a line without compromising your brand. It's a very, very, very interesting way.
The second question, so this is related to counterfeit, buying counterfeit products. Many people buy counterfeit instead. Will this affect luxury items marketing strategies? Maybe this is more of an issue in Asia because there are restrictions in the United States and Europe for counterfeit.
Of course, counterfeit is a big issue, and especially because then the quality doesn't deliver, and then you think that was original. I would tend to be optimistic personally, if you ask me my personal opinion, because if the theory is that everybody goes towards stuffing less things in their house, but of better quality, I would say eventually I would prefer to have like a very high quality piece of luxury clothing rather than have like showing off something that then if my friends to whom I'm showing off find out that it's counterfeit, it's not going to look great on me. So I personally think that this is very typical when you are like in the initial stages in the show off and you want to show off, but you probably don't have the buying power. But with time, I tend to be a little bit more optimistic. But the rational divergence in the airline and etc. depends. And there is a very recent, very good example of brands that if you manufacture everything with low quality and you just basically is a marketing story, your brand, then sooner or later this is going to happen to you. There is a very, very famous European brand that I'll not mention which one, but it built a big foothold in Asia, and now it turns out that it's all manufacturing at low quality in China, and so you need to have a real value in the quality of what you do and the craft on which it's made, and the fact that it's not imitable in an easy way, and deliver that to the consumer, or sooner or later the consumer will spot it and they'll move on. They stay in a 5-star hotel, but they're not going to stay there.
Yeah, especially with leather products, consumers are looking for that made in Italy or made in France sign to be convinced.
But that's not good enough, because it might be
that
like
can
assembled,
be
right?
well. Yeah.
So like how do you stay ahead of the curve in the product quality? Because at the end, we are still buying a product that needs to deliver the quality that is at the same level of the price.
Alfonso, the next two questions from my side, based on the content from our learners. The first thing is about the segments Başak were already talking about. So if you have older segments with an older age who are not using online, how to cater them, how to make, let's say, baby boomers or older segments buying your goods if they don't want to buy online?
Yeah, well, first of all, and it's very clear when you see the mix of channels in countries like Japan, the traditional department stores channel is still holding on very, very tightly because that's where they go. Where conversely, what I was saying, if there is a market where department stores are much more in crisis, it's Philippines and Malaysia, because you have this demographic push that accelerated the change. Then you have, I would say, a traditional marketing mix. So Japan still, while in our industry, like female magazines are kind of like declining across the world, and I can tell because my wife used to work for one of those. In Japan, they're still holding. So of course, the media mix and the distribution outlet go in hand with the demographic shift. Last thing is that I was reading an interview to the CEO of Google, Google and YouTube, and he was saying the way to get people to get on YouTube is through tutorials. So how to change something in your house, how to fix something in your house, and actually this is true across the board. Is to teach them, and again we go back to the supremacy of content. This is not about showing a nice video with a nice model. It's to teach something, and we see that in our cosmetic industry, which is all about tutorials.
There is another interesting question, if the team can scroll a little bit, it's the YouTube question 6, about, if you go up a little bit.
Down.
Down. Yes, one more.
Question 11.
Thank you, exactly. Yeah, can you give some stories about your experience about how to improve the user's experience?
No, very, very good. So Estée Lauder Companies is a big company that has many brands. So I manage two of them. One are Aveda and the other is Origins. So for us we have wonderful products. Origins is skincare, Aveda is hair care. It's professionally made products, very concentrated, very high performance. So it's, but I'm not going to talk about products. Of course, you need to have that. But how to differentiate that is we give you an experience. So Aveda, for instance, when you go to an Aveda store, and there are so many across Asia, what you get is actually a full experience. So we ask the person, and please go to a store and ask, I want to have the full experience. We are offered a cup of organic tea. First place is an Aveda organic tea. Then we are given a sensory journey where we can choose between 3 essential oils, and then with the oil that you choose, you're gonna get a neck and shoulder massage. Then we do a consultation on your scalp check, and then we recommend the product. So as you see, it goes much more beyond going there and having a little bit of product right on your hand. It's a real consultation, and also what we call me time. So it's like if I go to a store, I don't just expect that I get the same thing that I get on e-commerce, which is a little bit of just giving a product. I expect them to give something completely different. So it's like a moment where I can shut out the rest of the world from me and just concentrate on me and have something that is just for me. So this is what we do, for instance, at Aveda.
Maybe I will follow up with the two questions related to sustainability. I will read the YouTube question 10 related to that. So thank you for mentioning women's empowerment. We see lately many luxury brands taking a social stance and support society's matters and concerns. How this fits to marketing?
That was also my favorite question. Good, thank you.
How does it fit to marketing? In first place is what I was saying before, like if your practices are not sustainable, sooner or later somebody's going to ask the tricky questions and your business could be done, could be gone. No, I'm going to go to the women empowerment. But so if you produce down jackets, winter down jackets,
yeah.
sometimes soon somebody is going to ask you where those feathers come from and how they're treated. And this, by the way, almost derailed the IPO of Montclair 4 or 5 years ago. That question. If you're producing, I mean, anything they're going to ask you. I mean, so it's you need to you need to be ready for that, and actually you need to review so the sustainability of your company from this point of view. Where is the complication for marketing? It's double. The first one is that, as I said, that you need to review. This doesn't sit on marketing because number two, you need to review actually basically the whole how do you say the whole process of the company.
It's right? A part of strategy.
Yeah. So in the book, I tell the story of Patagonia, who said, in 3 years' time, we want only to use organic cotton, and they thought they would just go on the market and buy organic cotton. It was incredibly painful for them to make this change, and they had to go upstream to integrate, to find, to check, because also you need to check, where these people that are selling that to you and make sure this is true, because otherwise sometimes there's going to be somebody smart asking that question. So it's a huge work, and that it can only be driven from the top of the company. So marketing has the role to trigger that question and go to the top, to the general management of the company and say, we might not be around in 5 years' time if we don't go back and change this. And marketing, what they can do, they can lead this in the company, which is actually, I personally think it would be a great project and a great visibility for a marketing person tomorrow to be the future general manager of the company. Going to the first part of the question, women's empowerment. I mean, there are so many areas that you can work on: sustainability, on empowerment, etc. I guess my question is, my suggestion would be, don't pick them because they are fashionable. Pick one that makes sense to your business, to your product line and to your business model. So, for instance, Aveda, give you an example. We really every year we in April we do Earth Month, and so we gather money to support clean water. Why we do this? Because Aveda originally was born as a salon brand. So in salons and spa, you use a lot of water. So we feel somehow responsible for the fact that there is one of 7 people in the world do not have access to clean water, and we use so much in ours. So make it that it is a story that makes sense for your business and has to do with the fact that, I mean, we all want to sustain the consumption of the population, but the resources are scarce. So don't do women empowerment just because it's a very actual subject. Do it if it makes sense to your business model.
Great. So I would like to go to the question YouTube 11, which I expanded a little bit. What do you think about aspects of good storytelling? What makes good storytelling in the service industry? Here it's only about the hotel and tourism industry, but let's go a little bit further.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what is
I have a nice story.
Okay.
I always like to say that to me a brand is like a stone. And what happens is that we've seen over the last 50 years all these huge multinationals being kind of like trying to stretch this positioning of the brand over different consumer segments. So they've been kind of carving and polishing these stones, and they're having a beautiful story around it. But at the end, the problem is that when we buy a service, like an hotel or an airline or a product, they all kind of sound a little bit all the same. And because the marketer, we've been like carving and polishing this stone. And actually, I think it should be the opposite. It should be the opposite. It should be like the stone has these spikes. So the job of a storyteller is to find the spikes that actually are beautiful and connect with the consumer, and then to put a spotlight on it and make it more interesting. So going to the hotel industry, I still remember this conference which we attended last month that there was, I think it was the general manager of Ritz-Carlton, and he said, we are not in the business of providing sleeping rooms. We are in the business of providing memories. That's what he said. So what is the spike of the memory of your hotel chain? I mean, everybody has a nice room service. I mean, do you want to compete in the club sandwich ranking that Tyler Brûlé makes on Monocle every year? I don't know. What is the point of your hotel, right? What is the angle? What is the story, the heritage of your hotel, and how you make it big? I remember this. I just stayed recently in this wonderful hotel in Hanoi, the Metropole, opened in 1903, and so much happened of history in this hotel, to the point that they create a Hall of Fame with all the history. And I think I spent with my wife 1 hour going through it and visiting, etc. So to me, that's the spike. So I think as this is basic marketing, but we tend to forget it. Like, let's not be like everyone else. Let's go back to the archives of the history of our brand, of our hotel, and find what stands out, and then let's put a overwhelming amount of work and attention on this, rather than trying to be good on everything.
Basha, if you allow me, one more question.
Of course.
This was a follow-up question I saw earlier. So we have, you were talking about a hotel which is more than 100 years old. So we have in Hong Kong, for instance, Upper House. Upper House is a property which is younger. They are teaming up with Lululemon and doing some co-creation.
Yes.
What is the profit for both companies to do those let's say joint co-creations?
Okay, this is a very actual subject, right? I received a message this morning on showing like there was a collaboration between Uniqlo and I don't know, another brand, and there were people like fighting going under this morning in China, under like they were lifting the I would say the gate of the people were like crawling, etc. Okay, well I don't think it's necessary. That's a good example, but it's a very big subject. What is the advantage? I think the advantage and the danger of it is that because the consumer want the storytelling, they want to hear bedtime stories about your brand. Sometimes we don't have too many left, or we want to integrate. And so what you do is that I really believe in this thing that of the bridge of values between the consumers and the brand. And the brand wants somehow to enrich its storytelling, its bedtime story, its values, but they don't have it within the brand. So somehow, if there is a good affinity, they want to appropriate those values and create this association. Of course, it must make sense. So I really like the idea of Upper House and Lululemon doing together. Very young, extremely expensive, both of them, and lifestyle. And I think it's a wonderful idea. The danger of it is that it's like every marriage, right? When you marry somebody, you marry with a family, right? So you need to be very careful what's behind that brand, right? So that goes with it. Many years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, the CEO of Lululemon was fired because of some comments not very nice on how the pants look like. So you need to be very, very careful and do a lot of due diligence before you marry, because you don't want to happen to be married with somebody who then has a problem. That's the only thing.
Basha?
Can we please scroll down a few questions? Oh, this was the question. Continue, please.
What does electronic content should focus on? Okay, super important thing. It's the supremacy of content. So it should be, we need to do, sorry, I'm going to say something probably very basic, but we tend to forget that we should have something that people are really going to take 3 minutes of their life to watching. Normally, teaching, it's teaching something. It's the way to go. I would say number one, forget about static contents. I think Instagram is wonderful, but it's just a period in time. Either they move very quickly to videos, or it's going to be YouTube who takes over. Anyway, so it's video content, and it's about learning and teaching. Our industry, which is the beauty industry, is one of the first industry that was completely disrupted by these influencers. So all these bloggers and tastemakers showing in their bathroom the effects they get. So to me, I would say teaching is always a safe place to start with.
Okay. If the team scrolls a little bit more, so then we can go for more questions. I answer one question in flyby. Do you think that social media has changed the way of marketing? I think we can agree here on this table that, of course, social media changed or turned
forever.
Marketing on head forever, but it didn't change the principles of marketing. So the principles of marketing are basically the foundations are the same, but the way we do marketing are different. But Jacques.
There are many questions still on sustainability, so which one shall we take? We see actually 4 questions related to CSR and sustainability.
Does keeping sustainability get the company more profitable than it used to be? Okay, this is interesting, and I have no doubt that in long term the answer is yes. And I think if not only for the risk side, I mean, I went very quick, but if you look at that graph, British Petroleum and Exxon, British Petroleum is worth half of what it was 10 years ago, just because they overlooked the sustainability. In long term, yes. In the short term, I think it's difficult to say. I would like to treat it as a life insurance for a brand. And I think this is coming. It's coming everywhere. It's coming in. Even for the oil industries, it's coming. But look at the social media industry, like the news of yesterday. Now the Department of Justice is opening investigations on. So if you're a company like Amazon, Google, and Facebook, and you built your success in a not very sustainable privacy mode, or in allowing a backdoor for our democracies to be hijacked, sooner or later somebody's going to point the finger at you. So yesterday, the titles of this company. So to me, it's like almost a life insurance that any owner of a brand should start working on before the brand disappears in
I think that's a good tagline. Life insurance. Sustainability is life insurance. Maybe we can also cover the question just about that. Do you think being sustainable can be a reason for a customer to choose a brand?
It is. I don't think it's for 100% of the customers. And as, by the way, it is not for any decision we do in our life, right? It's not like... so I think there is a segment of a customer. This is growing, and look at the new generations, look at what is happening in Europe on the political market share of the political spectrum. So I wouldn't say everybody chooses for sustainability, but I would say this is coming. This is coming, and I really want to again make an example of the plastic straw industry, an industry that disappeared overnight 6 months ago.
Maybe everything else being the same, if the product quality is equal, customers will be more likely to choose the sustainable option rather than other option?
If we are able to storytell it. Because the challenge is, number one, you need to change, it's a lot of work to change the company behind, and then you have to be able to storytell it. And it's not easy because by definition, sustainability is not an easy to explain matter, is quite technical. So I think we need more communication experts that are able to find the ways, and maybe through the digital content, not explain it as a like boring company, but having like an influencer, a YouTuber that is able to explain what does it mean in everyday life, the sustainability to them.
Bajrak, we have, I think, time for a last short question answer. I think the YouTube question number 21 is interesting. Let me summarize. Alfonso, you were mentioning about two companies. They work together. Let's say in the term of sustainability,
Yeah.
one company falls behind. How can both, or the company who still keeps the values, how can they survive such an imbalanced
Well,
situation?
then you are in a crisis mode. It's like it happened to you, because you married them. So you, like in a marriage, then you have to decide: can this be saved, this marriage, or is better to cut it? It's because you married them. Their crisis is your crisis.
So you incorporate, right, and the risk spills over.
So
to
you need to decide very quickly whether it happened many times, like when Tiger Woods, right, the scandal of
Yes.
Tiger Woods, then Nike and many other companies decided that they could not survive the partnership could not survive because there was all this values transfer that suddenly turned into like a negative value transfer. So I don't know if I am answering, but it's that's the risk, that the minute you marry another company, those values become your values.
Okay.
So you're exposed to that.
Okay.
So unfortunately, 1 hour already finished. We see the big clock on our screen. So thank you very much.
Thanks to you.
For your presentation
Pleasure.
and answering all the questions. And thank you, learners. We had, I think, close to 30 questions today. So
Amazing.
Thank you very much. We hope you enjoyed this session, and we'll see you online.
Good continuation.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much. Bye-bye.